Alright, so this is going to be part 3 to What If Deku Had Manifest. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
The bad bitch like she average. I'm a savage, little hoe, what you want do? I'm about cash if the raw fast. I'ma get that little nigga by any means.
Alright, so before we get into this What If, I'd like to say that I just got done making the cover for my new series that's going to come out pretty soon called UA Year 1. So as you can see on the screen, it's basically the main character, and you notice that he has tattoos. So that's actually part of his quirk. His quirk is called tapestry, which is a type of design, but also a type of tattoo. So it's part of his quirks. It's part of his quirk. I'm not gonna really tell you what it is, but yeah, it's a big part of his quirk. And yeah, so if you don't remember from my last video, this is actually gonna take place between 100 and 200 years before the start of the anime. So around the second generation of quirk users. And yeah, if you want to be a part of this series and you want your OC to get included, go to my Discord. I'll have a link in the description, and you could post your OC down in the UA Year 1 part. So yeah, with that being said, let's get into the actual kind of what if. So in the last part, we just got done with the heroes versus villains, and this part we're actually going to go over the USJ and things like that. So our story left off a little bit after the first round, or after the kind of after school, on the same day that the heroes versus villains kind of test happened. So All Might is talking to Deku, and he pulled him aside, and they're kind of talking in the teacher's lounge. And what All Might asks Deku is if he wants to be the 9th successor to his quirk, One for All. So Deku's kind of confused, like, what do you mean? Like, I didn't know quirks can be like given to other people. He's like, yes, usually they can't, but my quirk is a little bit different. And he would explain how it was created and how it gets transferred to people. And he would tell Deku that you've done a lot of training with your brother, so I think you'll be able to handle it pretty easily. And this is when Deku says, like, well, if you think I should have it, then I know someone even better. Why don't you just give it to my brother, right? And this is when All Might would be like, I see. Well, I did try to, but he declined and told me the same thing. He told me that there was someone better and that someone more determined to become a hero, and he recommended you. And Deku would start he'd be like, wow, really? And then he would kind of start crying a little, and he'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna make him proud, and I'm gonna say yes. And this is when All Might would give him a piece of his hair and be like, all right, just eat this and you'll get the power. So Deku's kind of freaked out a little bit, but he does it anyways. And he's like, All Might, I don't feel anything. Well, you're not gonna feel it right away, but eventually you'll be able, or sooner or later, basically tomorrow, you'll get the power, and you'll be the 9th successor. As Deku's trying to walk out of the room, All Might gives him one more piece of advice. He says, don't try to go all out with the quirk just yet. We don't know how much you could use so far, because even though your body's built, it has gotten stronger from the generations, and you might only be able to use around, let's say, 50% without really, injuring yourself. So Deku would keep that in mind, and he was thinking, like, what if I use it in my quirk, right? Because not every kind of creature has the same kind of structure as humans, so they might be able to handle the pressure better and things like that. So we would get to the next day, and this is the day of the USJ, or this is the day that Aizawa actually tells him about it, and he basically says that they're going to go there to basically practice rescue type missions and things like that, and he tells them to get ready. So they go to lunch, right? And this is after the kind of this is after the media would have talked to them. So they're at lunch, and Deku is with his normal group, that being Ida and Uraraka, and this is when Tamaki and the other two members of the Big Three actually come. So Normally, Mirio would be the first one to kind of chime in the conversation, followed by Nejire and maybe Tamaki, because Tamaki would usually just be sitting in the back or just trying to hide his face. But this one, I think, since Deku is actually there, he actually changes like a lot, right? So because of how he wants to act in front of Deku, he puts up this like kind of face where he acts very confident. He slicks his hair back, kind of, and he walks up to the group with Mirio and Nejire following him, and he's like, "Oh hey, brother," right? Since they're related, or he would be like, "Hey Zuko, what are you doing? Like, are these your friends?" And this is when Deku would be like, "Yeah, this is Uraraka and this is Ida," and they would introduce themselves. And this is when Uraraka would be like, "Are you really part of the big three?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm part of the big three, and my hero name is Sun Eater," right? And then this was when both of them would be in awe, and Deku would be like, "Yeah, my brother's pretty cool." And this is when Nejire and Mirio would be kind of shocked to see him act like this. More Nejire than Mirio, because Mirio has seen it before, since they are friends, like they're best friends with Tamaki. So obviously he would have met his brother at one point. So yeah, and this is when Nejire would kind of like ask questions towards Tamaki, basically saying like, "Tamaki, you're usually really quiet and shy. What do you, this is a really big change for you." And he'd be like, "What are you talking about?" And this is when he would pull her aside, don't try to blow my cover. My brother really looks up to me, so I can't look pathetic like I usually do. And she'd be like, "Oh, okay, I get it." And this is when they would come back to the conversation. But before they can continue, this is when the alarms goes off, and they think that the school is getting invaded. So Tamaki tells Deku and his friends to basically go the same direction that all the other kids are going, and he's going to check it out. So him and the big three go, and they basically find out that it's they basically find out it's just the media. So Mirio goes in front of everyone using his permutation, and he basically says that it's only the media, and he gets everyone's attention because he'd be naked at this point since he used his quirk and he's not using his hero suit. So everyone would be kind of freaking out because there's just some naked guy screaming at them, talking about how it's just the media. So eventually they would listen and they would calm down. So after this was done, they would go back to their classroom and they would get ready to go to the USJ. So since Deku is the kind of class representative, and I guess the vice representative would be Momo, since she was in the main series at first, she would also be there instructing the kids to get in the bus in an orderly fashion. So after that was done, they would have that same conversation that they would have on the bus usually, which was about the three strongest students in class 1A. So and Suyu would talk about how Deku, since his brother's part of the big three, he has a very strong quirk, and she notices that she's been training a lot, or he's been training a lot, and he has a lot of control over it. And he would basically explain that since they were kids and he found out that he had the same quirk as his brother, they've been training to kind of hone their skills, and it's only been really recently that they've been focusing on physical training, because I think at this point both of them would be like pretty built, but not like overly buff. I think their muscle mass or the muscle density would be a lot higher than the normal people, so they would still keep that kind of slim figure, just that their muscles would be more dense, if that makes sense. So yeah, after this, they would then switch the conversation to Todoroki and Bakugo and talk about their quirks for a bit, but not as much as Deku, since they know the most about Deku's quirks, since his brother has the same quirk as him. So yeah, so eventually they would get to the USJ, and this is when they would open the doors and they would meet 13. 13 would do that speech that she would normally do about the responsibility of quirk users and their quirks, and Deku would listen a little bit, not really having that same connection that he would have in canon, with because he doesn't really injure himself while doing stuff. So yeah, so we would get to the part where a giant kind of gateway would open up, and this is actually it would be Shigaraki and Kurogiri in the Nomu. So the big gateway would open up and a bunch of villains would come out. Aizawa would go down there to kind of fight, and he would basically tell 13 to protect the children or the kids so that they could escape, right? So before that could happen, this is when Kurogiri actually blocks their way. So Deku, thinking that it's his chance, he goes down with Aizawa to basically help him out. So what Deku does is that he opens up one of his his bags that's on his chest, right? And he basically eats a few things. First, he would eat a few bugs. He would eat a grasshopper, I think it's called a horned beetle. Someone was commenting that, and he eats a bit of snake with that. So after that, he swallows it down. He transforms his legs into grasshoppers legs so he could jump faster, and yeah, so he does that. And he also eats a spider, and he has some stuff from earlier that he ate during lunch and breakfast, but probably not breakfast at this time because it might have digested at this point. So he would basically do a bunch of transformations. He would combine the exoskeleton of a beetle or a normal bug and a crab, and he would have the senses, thermal senses of a snake, and the kind of the great eyes of a spider, and the ability to shoot webs and things like that. So he would start bouncing around and basically kicking some villains, but at the last second before he lands the hit, he would actually change his feet into chicken feet so that they would have a greater impact, since you know what I mean, they'd be a lot stronger than insect legs, I guess you could say, because I'm pretty sure that's the reason why he uses them, because they have a lot of strength. And Aizawa would be like, what do you think you're doing here, Deku? Or he would say Izuku, and he would basically say that I'm just here to help. You can't take on all these villains by yourself, so just let me help, because my brother, I'm just as good as my brother, and he's part of the big three, and he's basically a pro at this point. So he's like, fine, just try not to get hurt. So Deku's able to capture a few of the villains using his tentacles, hands, and he's able to block a lot of projectiles using his clamshells and the other kind of protective shells that he has, like the exoskeleton and the crab shell. So yeah, it's he has pretty good defense and things like that. So Shigaraki would see this and he would think this is really dumb, since they're really here for All Might and he's not here. So he gets kind of angry, and after a bit, and Aizawa would take out a few of the villains, and eventually he would go for Shigaraki. He would try to hit him, but his fist or his elbow would get caught by Shigaraki's hand and start disintegrating. And before it could do any more damage, is when Deku would try to split him up using basically the clam hand to kind of split him, being attached to a tentacle to extend its reach. So kind of like the what's it called? Kind of like the catapult from part 2, but a little bit different. So after that was done, this is when he would send the Nomu after Deku, right? So Deku's like, okay, this guy's a lot more powerful, I could tell, so I'm gonna have to use All Might's quirk, one for all. So Deku actually turns his hand into a claw, a crab claw, and actually rushes towards the the Nomu, right? And he combines this with One for All, and he basically also uses the kind of beetle strength to his advantage, transforming his like lower half, his like legs into like beetle legs, to kind of give it that extra kind of strength that he needs. So he would try and he would stab the kind of Nomu, right? But it wouldn't really be enough. It'd be kind of stuck in his body, and the Nomu would see this and basically grab Deku, kind of try to break the shell. But before he could, do it, this is when Deku would basically change his legs into grasshopper legs and basically kick himself off the Nomu. So Aizawa would see this happening, and he would see the kind of monster regenerate. So he would tell Deku like his quirk is regeneration, and Shigaraki would start laughing. He's like, he'd be like, "You fools! There's more than one quirk in that Nomu. He also has shock absorption, so you're never gonna be able to like defeat him." So Deku, his hand is kind of hurt. His like hands like in a lot of pain since he was using around 100% at this time, since he doesn't really know how to control it, and he was getting crushed by the Nomu. So when he transforms back his arm, it's kind of bleeding a little bit, and he's like, "Oh, I guess this is what All Might was talking about. If I didn't have the crab arm, it could have been a lot worse, right?" So he starts thinking like, "All right, I'm gonna have to get a little bit creative with this." So he's thinking of what he could do. So what Deku does is that he's gonna tell Aizawa to basically tell him or use his quirk to kind of deactivate the regeneration, and he has a plan. Deku basically turns each of his fingers into different tentacles, and where the suction cups would be, he's actually going to replace that with the fangs of a snake, right? And he's also going to basically, what he's going to do is crush the Nomu. Not really crush, but he's going to wrap himself around the Nomu and basically inject them with a combination of the venom of both spider and snake, right? I'm not sure what type of snake or spider he would have eaten at this point, but let's say it's something that he could eat that could also be kind of dangerous, right? So yeah. So we could say that One for All also boosts its potency as well. So he basically starts injecting a lot of poison, and or not poison, a lot of venom, right? And this isn't a normal amount of venom, since it's not like a small, it's not like one snake or even like one spider. This is a bunch of different points that it's in contact with. So it's like several hundred like fangs getting injected at once into the Nomu, right? So, and Aizawa would be using his quirk to stop his regeneration. So if you don't know, basically, from my knowledge, spider venom basically liquefies your insides, at least for insects, and for like larger kind of prey, it doesn't really work that way. But that's only because I think it's only a small amount. So at this point, he'd be like kind of melting, I guess, somewhat in a strange way. And after this would happen, this is when Deku would basically use his other hand and go for the head, and use the kind of claw, the kind of crab claw, and basically use the kind of beetle strength to kind of like cut off his head. So after that was done, this is when Shigaraki would basically say that, this is unfair, you guys were cheating, and he gets very angry. And this is when the heroes actually come through, and Snipe actually shoots all 4 of his limbs, and Kurogiri has to escape with him, leaving the other villains behind. So All Might would come, and he'd be very impressed that Deku and Aizawa were able to basically stop him. Aizawa is not as hurt as he was in canon, and All Might didn't need to use that. He didn't have to waste his time limit, so it's still at the same amount as it was at the beginning of the series. So yeah, I guess I'll end it here, or we could go a little bit further actually. So after this was done, the press would see how the kid was able to basically help the teacher fight, and they would know that he is part of, or he's the brother of the big three, and they would like kind of see him as a hero and say that he's like a big he's like gonna be a future hero just like his brother. And they say that his family, he is gonna their family is gonna become a line of great heroes basically. So yeah, I'm gonna end it here, and in the next part we'll go over the kind of sports festival and things like that. So yeah, like I said before, if you want to be part of the year one kind of UA year one, just join the Discord. It's gonna be linked in the description. So yeah, also the thing about the copy quirks, the poll actually won, and basically from my understanding he could only copy mutation quirks. So yeah, mutation quirks / transformation quirks, so no emitters. So with that being said, this is gonna be the end of the video. So yeah,